The note felt like a trap laid by someone who knew just enough about authority to mimic it, but not enough to pass unnoticed by someone like me. I held the paper with both hands, studying its language, its formatting, the way vehicle violation screamed from the top in a typeface desperate to be feared. There were no details, no citation number, no ordinance code, no HOA signature, just vague threats cloaked in the arrogance of made-up jurisdiction. My Jeep, a 2021 Wrangler Rubicon, freshly washed, legally registered, and parked at a clean 90-degree angle on my driveway, was suddenly being treated like contraband. I reread the line, "Remove immediately or it will be towed." Not maybe. Will. There was no HOA meeting notice, no violation letter in my mailbox, just this slip of plastic-sheathed nonsense implying I'd already lost some unwritten battle I never knew I was part of. Willow Creek Meadows isn't a sprawling estate. We're 37 homes packed into a horseshoe-shaped cul-de-sac tucked behind a slow-moving suburb. It's not the kind of place that gets drama. But that note changed something. It flicked on a switch in the neighborhood like a ripple in still water. First it was the Bennetts, then the Clarks, then old Miss Halloran who barely even leaves her porch. All of them had stories, and all of them started the same way, with a piece of paper that looked official but had no real name behind it. The paranoia set in fast. I began checking my security camera footage at night. I repositioned the front ring camera to cover more of the street. I couldn't shake the image of strangers creeping through my neighborhood under the pretense of authority. People with no name, no office, and no accountability. It was calculated, whoever they were, they struck after midnight, always on quiet weekdays, using just enough uniformity to scare people into compliance. The Neighborhood Compliance Division? It wasn't real. No records, no affiliation with our HOA. And that number at the bottom? I called it 10 times. No ring, no voicemail. Just silence, like the number had never been real in the first place. Whatever this was, it wasn't a prank. It was a campaign. Targeted, deliberate, and now clearly escalating. And I had the sinking feeling that my Jeep was just the beginning. There's a particular kind of rage that doesn't announce itself with shouting or broken plates. It coils inside you, silent and toxic, burning slow like oil on a stove, hotter with every hour that passes unanswered. That's what I felt when I stepped outside that morning and found empty space where my Jeep had stood just the night before. No broken glass, no drag marks, just clean-cut tire grooves in the gravel and a single set of boot prints leading in and out, faint but unmistakable, an insult etched into the edge of my property. I walked around the spot like maybe, just maybe, I was imagining things. But the oil drip stain was still there. So was the faint rectangular imprint from the tire iron I'd left in the back seat. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a removal. A calculated clinical extraction. I called the police because that's what you're supposed to do when your vehicle disappears. The officer on the other end sounded sympathetic enough, but I knew the routine. "Probably impounded," she said. "Maybe a city tow." But nothing turned up. Not on local records, not in the county impound. VIN flagged. Plates clean. "We'll enter it into the system," she said, her voice dropping a register like she'd already written it off. But I hadn't. I pulled up the footage that night, expecting maybe some blur of headlights, a glitch in the timestamp, anything. What I saw made my hands go cold. 2:08 a.m. A faded tow truck, the kind you'd expect to see rusting behind a junkyard fence, crawled into the frame. No markings, no plate I could make out. 2 men stepped out, hoods up, reflective safety vests cinched over cheap flannel. One held something up toward the camera, a flash of dull metal in the porch light. It wasn't a badge, not really, but it looked close enough to pass at a glance. Seconds later, the screen went dark as duct tape swallowed the lens. I sat back, staring into that silence, my own face reflected in the black screen. This wasn't theft. It was theater. A performance meant to intimidate. And it worked, because they weren't afraid. They moved like they belonged, like they'd rehearsed this. Not the clumsy bravado of kids pulling a prank. This was professional, practiced. And that's when the hate sank in. The kind that whispers you were chosen because they thought you were easy. Because they thought you'd roll over. Because they thought you'd never fight back. By the end of the week, I had transitioned from victim to investigator, not by choice, but by necessity. The system that should have protected us had failed, and the only authority willing to act decisively was the one I built myself, armed with a printer, a stack of yellow flyers, and a growing sense of righteous fury. Each flyer bore a bold headline in black block letters: Fake HOA alert. Imposters in our neighborhood. I stapled them to light poles, taped them to mailboxes, slid them under doormats. I wasn't just warning people, I was drawing them out. And it worked faster than I anticipated. Marla called me first. She was shaking when I arrived at her door, holding one of the flyers like it was a lifeline. She told me how, just days before my Jeep vanished, a man in a reflective vest knocked on her door and demanded she remove the fishing boat her husband had parked beside their garage. When she refused, 2 nights later, her mailbox was torn off its post and thrown into her flower bed. No note, no explanation, just that silent retaliation. Then came Tim from across the cul-de-sac. He'd found the side of his white picket fence slathered in red spray paint, a crude violation, marking sprayed diagonally like a scar. He'd assumed it was teenagers until he saw the same duct-taped notice on his recycling bin. Neighborhood compliance, it read. Same phantom phone number. Same vanishing authority. Within 2 days, a dozen stories surfaced. All had the same fingerprints: late-night visits, demands delivered by people with nothing but clipboards and vests, veiled threats followed by property damage. It wasn't just mischief, it was calculated escalation. The pattern was surgical: intimidate, provoke, punish. No traceable identity, no real HOA authority, just illusion and coercion. I brought it all to Curtis, our HOA president. When he saw the footage of the men who'd taken my Jeep, his entire posture changed. The man was pale, trembling. "That's not us," he muttered, voice hollow. "We've never contracted towing. We wouldn't. This is something else entirely." I pressed him. No names, no meetings, no subcontractors, nothing. The HOA was clean. Whatever this was, it had wormed in from the outside, wearing the skin of legitimacy. That night, I made the call to Mark Raleigh, my old friend from the sheriff's office. The second he saw the video, those fake vests, that duct tape over my camera, he didn't hesitate. His eyes narrowed. "These guys are organized," he said. Then, with the kind of cold certainty only a career cop can muster, he leaned in and said, "Let's set the bait." The setup was meticulous. The decoy Jeep sat there beneath the dim wash of my porch light, positioned at the exact angle mine had occupied days earlier, like a ghost returning to the scene of its own abduction. From a distance, it was identical. Same forest green paint, same soft-top wear patterns, even the same Support Our Troops bumper sticker I'd had on mine since my brother deployed in 2018. But this one wasn't just bait, it was a trap with teeth. The dash cam embedded in the windshield captured everything in crisp HD, the license plate, the driver's face, even the crude duct tape roll waiting in the center console of their truck. A pinhole microphone in the headrest piped the audio directly to us in real time, relayed into the cramped interior of the unmarked surveillance van parked 2 blocks away. I was in the back beside Raleigh, eyes glued to the multi-screen rig, headphones clamped tight. The feed flickered with motion as they arrived. 2:14 a.m. Dead quiet. The hum of the tow truck engine, suppressed but still audible, crawled up the street like a predator on padded paws. No headlights, no hazard lights. They backed in smooth, like they'd done this 100 times. And they had. 2 men exited. The driver was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a contractor's confidence. He wore the same reflective vest from the security footage, but under it, you could make out the dark outline of a ballistic-style plate carrier, fake, of course, but meant to intimidate. His partner stayed near the sidewalk, his fingers nervously tapping the edge of a knockoff badge clipped to his belt, like he was rehearsing a lie he wouldn't have to tell unless cornered. The driver knelt beside the Jeep, shone a flashlight beneath it, gave a low grunt of approval, then returned with a hydraulic winch cable. The metal hook swung loosely in his hand like a loaded weapon. "Let's make this quick," he muttered. "We flip it in Camden, no questions asked." My blood surged, every muscle in my body tensed. The tone wasn't casual, it was routine. Like this was just another night, another paycheck. And that's what made it unforgivable. In that instant, the anger returned. Not the helpless rage of a man who'd lost his property, but the lethal clarity of someone watching criminals walk into their own trap. These weren't kids pulling a prank. These were predators, and they thought they were still the hunters. Raleigh didn't blink. His voice was calm, practiced, but his knuckles were pale against the mic. "Units, move in." The van burst into coordinated motion as cruisers silently activated just beyond the perimeter, engines revving. It was over for them. They just didn't know it yet. The click of the winch cable echoed like a death sentence. It was the sound that triggered the ambush, like a tripwire pulled taut. In an instant, the silent stillness of the cul-de-sac was obliterated. Red and blue strobes ignited from all angles, casting jagged shadows across the siding of every nearby house. Sirens erupted like a wall of noise, not for show, but as a message. A message that the illusion was over. The tow truck rocked forward an inch before stopping dead. The driver froze mid-motion, his hands still on the controls, jaw unhinged like a man who'd glimpsed the end of the road but hadn't expected it to arrive tonight. The passenger, the one with the fake badge, panicked first. He bolted, knees pumping, flashlight clattering against the pavement, but he didn't get far. The lip of the sidewalk caught his foot like a snare, and he pitched forward, full body, into the side of my recycling bin. The plastic cracked on impact. His breath left him in a single loud oof, and he didn't get up. Officers surged in, shouting commands, weapons drawn but lowered, controlled, rehearsed. The driver didn't resist. He raised his hands slowly, muttering over and over, "I thought this was sanctioned. I thought this was part of the program." Like the lie could still save him. Like if he said it enough times, it might become true. But there was no program, no authority. Just a flimsy fiction that had finally met a reality it couldn't bluff its way out of. I watched from the sidewalk, Raleigh beside me, arms crossed tight as the suspects were cuffed and read their rights. His face was stone, but I could feel the satisfaction in his silence. They weren't just caught. They were exposed, naked under the floodlights of actual law enforcement. Their fake uniforms and scripted authority worth less than the clipboards they carried. The investigation unraveled fast. These guys weren't masterminds, just cogs in a low-grade criminal machine that ran on fear and appearances. They'd been hitting suburbs for months, issuing counterfeit citations, coercing payments, and targeting properties for theft. My Jeep, we learned, had already been hauled to a storage facility in Edgewater, stripped of anything traceable. It was evidence now. Every second of the takedown had been captured. High-definition video, clean audio, full chain of custody. The DA's office took the case personally. The fact that these grifters had exploited the language of authority to manipulate homeowners. that lit a fire in the legal teams. It wasn't just theft. It was impersonation, fraud, conspiracy, and it had the full weight of the county behind it now. The illusion had crumbled, and beneath it, there was only rot. Justice, when it comes, doesn't always roar. It lands with precision, with finality, and in this case, with the cold, metallic click of cuffs closing around wrists that once brandished fake authority like a weapon. 8 years each. That was the sentence. 8 years for the lies, the intimidation, the theft, and the gut-wrenching feeling of being violated in your own driveway. It wasn't just a victory, it was precedent. A message burned into public record. You don't get to impersonate law and walk away clean. But justice doesn't only live in courtrooms or behind prison walls. Sometimes it blooms in places far more personal. Our town hall hadn't been full in years. Not since the days when residents debated dog leash lengths and the exact shade of beige acceptable for garage doors. That night, though, it was standing room only. People who hadn't spoken to each other in months shared benches, elbows bumping, murmuring stories and nodding as I took the mic. I didn't need theatrics. The footage spoke for itself. My voice was calm, measured. Every sentence another nail in the coffin of the illusion these men had built. The real HOA board, Curtis at the helm, still pale from the whole ordeal, stood beside me and issued a formal apology. No half measures. They took ownership, even if the crime hadn't been theirs. "We should have seen the signs sooner," Curtis admitted. "We failed to protect our residents. That ends tonight." And it did. New surveillance systems went up within days, fully funded, state-approved, real oversight, real deterrence. No more shadows. And as symbolic as it sounds, every fraudulent citation these imposters ever left behind, dozens of them, dug out of glove compartments and kitchen drawers, were thrown into a barrel behind the town hall. A single match lit the pile. Flames licked the sky as we stood together in silence, watching the false authority disintegrate into ash. It was part cleansing, part exorcism. Every ember a piece of dignity reclaimed. My insurance came through. Full replacement, no deductible. I went straight to the dealer and ordered the upgraded model, steel bumpers, reinforced lock kit, 4-inch lift. When it rolled into my driveway, its white paint gleaming under the afternoon sun, the plate was already mounted. STWNGED. A quiet tribute. A loud warning. Now, when I step outside, neighbors don't just wave. They linger. They ask questions. They thank me. And more importantly, they watch. Because we're not the same neighborhood we were before. We've seen the face of false power and we know how to recognize it now. Let them try again. We'll be waiting.